Hello and welcome to the Remind Podcast, the podcast where we get inside the real estate entrepreneur's mind. My name is Harrison Smith. I'm the Director of Growth with the Matei Group here in Maine and expanding throughout New England. And I'm joined today by Nick Laverriere. How you doing, Nick?
Good, Harrison. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you. So for those that don't know who you are, Nick, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and what you're up to right now?
Yeah, sure. I have been in the real estate business for just over 3 years now. Work for Portside Real Estate Group. Target areas, really Portland to Biddeford, Saco area. Um, Also active real estate investor. Currently renovating a 6 unit down in Biddeford, which is going really well. Really excited about that.
Nice.
Definitely work with buyers a lot more. My age group, they're all buying their first homes or step up homes. So I really enjoy that part of the business, and that's where most of my business lies currently.
Okay, so as we find out, most people didn't start in real estate. They end up in real estate. That's my story and most everybody else's too. What was your path? Where'd you get started and how'd you end up in real estate?
Yeah, I have a really kind of interesting path. So I graduated from UMaine with my accounting degree. I had an internship in public accounting, decided I didn't really want to go that route. Wasn't a good fit for my personality. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went and worked for a company that did marine engineering. Um, and my job there was basically quality assurance, which involved a lot of sitting around on the night shift in Wisconsin. So gave me a lot of downtime, long hours, and ended up reading a lot of books. And I'm sure I've heard this on podcasts a million times, and I'm sure you've heard it as well. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yep.
And that really I was like, oh man, I'm making this money. I don't want to work forever. Let's get into some real estate. And I read some other real estate investing books. I used that job to buy my first 2 duplexes. And after my friends, I was 24, 26 years old when I bought those. And my friends would see that and ask me a whole bunch of questions, even people that I hadn't talked to in forever. And I kind of, when I was done traveling, because the work was like a 2 month on, 1 month off type of deal.
Sure.
I was getting engaged. I didn't really want to do that anymore. So I spun them off kind of, to a full-time thing. Like, hey, if I'm doing this, it's helping me build wealth. Let me help other people kind of do the same thing.
Gotcha. So you really came into real estate as an investor and then eventually became an agent.
Yeah. Yep. That's the course. So it's funny. My wife was actually an agent prior to me being an agent. So she was my girlfriend at the time. So I saw what she was doing, and she's out of the business now, but she kept telling me this is a really good fit for your personality. And I think they're going to be really good at it. So she's the one that kind of pushed me into going to the agent side of things.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, which that's my story too. I read that book and it completely changed my mind.
Yeah.
Was there a particular piece of that book that really stuck with you, or was it just the whole concept of money?
It's been such a long time since I've read it, so maybe I'll have to revisit it soon to kind of refresh the memory. But I read the whole series, and basically
Okay.
the cash flow quadrant, I think, really stuck with me.
Mm.
Hey, you have to make this money in order to get to the right side of the quadrant, or however it's laid out.
Yep.
To make your money work for you, so you can become the investor or the business owner and be able to, buy your freedom, basically.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Give you passive income.
Yeah, it's that whole path through that whole transition from working for the money to having the money work for you. And the way that once you understand how that works, it really does kind of blow your mind.
Yeah. And that's still on the self-employed side of things. So I got to get over to the business owner.
Yeah. You'll get there in time.
Yeah.
All right. So what most attracted you to the business of being an agent? So you came in as an investor, got to see that part of the world, ended
Yep.
up as an agent. We see a lot of people end up going the other way. They're an agent first, then an investor. You were investor first, agent second. What drew you to being an agent and not just doing your own thing, but actually helping others?
So, 2 things really, and I touched on the first one is the helping others type of thing. It's really awesome to see people buy their first MLD or buy their first house and stop paying rent just because you're helping them get on the right track as far as their financial futures. So was really enticing to me. Really fulfilling. and everybody wants to have the fulfilling gig, fulfilling
Mhm.
job. So that was cool. And the other thing was if I was going to keep in the course of investing, um, that the task that I have to do as an agent, the actual job, and the it just aligns so well.
Mhm.
It just makes so much sense. Like looking for leads, networking, that just lends itself to building a network of vendors, building a network of potential properties you can buy. So it just goes hand in hand. And then, of course, when you buy a property, you can help yourself a little bit with a down payment because you get that commission.
No, that's a great point because I think that a lot of people, um, they're an investor, they're doing all these things, and then in the meantime, you come across all these leads, and maybe they aren't leads that work as an investment, but they could be
Sure.
leads of people that need to sell and need your help. If you're going to be doing the work, you might as well be able to offer them both options, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, hey, I could buy this house, and I think it's a lot what you guys do over there.
Mhm.
You give them the option, and if you can't, if it doesn't make sense for as an investment, you list it and get to the open market and help them out that way.
The consumer likes to have that option.
Absolutely.
There are situations where they just need to sell it. They need to sell it right now. Something in their life has happened, something's changed, they've got to move, whatever. They need to just do something right now. And being able to offer them a quick solution that, obviously a quick solution is a little bit cheaper, but a quick solution is good.
Yep.
Or if they've got the time and they really want to maximize, then you can give them that longer listing solution and actually put it on the market. But being able to offer both, I think, makes you more valuable. It gives the consumer more options. And I'm always surprised that more people don't do it.
And I think it builds confidence in you from the consumer
Mm.
because you're giving them options, and when you give someone options, you're basically telling them, "I'm not forcing you into this decision.
Mhm.
You make your own choice, and I'll help you out whatever way you want to go."
Yeah, that's a great point too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the investing journey. Tell us a little bit about that first deal and then how you've gone from that first deal to the latest deals.
Yeah. So first deal was a duplex in Stanford. Um, it was actually a single family that was a duplex uh, 10, 15 years ago. So I converted it back into a duplex, which was my first kind of value add project. Um, Not that I've done very much, but it was my first like hands on, built the wall, put in the kitchen, did a bunch of other renovations, rented it out. Tenants were awesome. It was nice. I like the duplex. I wouldn't invest in Stanford now just 'cause it's a little far from me. I'm about an hour from Stanford. I
Sure.
like to be closer. But it was nice for me to have a duplex there because it was a lot more hands off. They each had their own driveway and they really had like a pride of ownership. They took care of the lawn. So it was a good situation. Second place I bought was a house hack kind of duplex situation. So I lived on one side and then rented out the other side. I was in Saco. Um, I was, so I, my biggest mistake in investing. So I started real estate just before COVID. Um, and everything, like, obviously everybody knew what was first happening with COVID. So
Mhm.
I sold the duplex in Saco because I needed to hedge my bet. I knew I could make a little bit of money by selling it, and I needed to make sure that I was able to float if my tenants stopped paying me rent.
Sure.
Hindsight, I should have held it. But so I kind of pulled the trigger really quickly to sell that one, middle of 2020, and my tenants never stopped paying. So I could have,
Mm.
held on to it, but sold that one, just to hedge the bet. And then last year I sold the um, duplex in Stanford. Trying to remember the timeline. I think it was last year. Either way, I 1031 that into the 16 it and bid it for it, which
Oh, okay.
really an awesome experience because I was able to put more than 20% down with no money out of pocket, um, and get an awesome cash flowing asset and bid it for it.
It's
So I'm putting a
awesome.
lot of work into it to raise the rents, but yeah.
So
So
over
far.
time, you've converted two duplexes now into a 6 unit.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It's
And I have my
amazing.
house in Portland, but I don't really consider that an investment.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. All right. So you did a 1031 exchange, which some people may or may not be familiar with. But for those that aren't, can you explain a little bit about what does that 1031 process look like as somebody who's gone through it? A lot of us understand what it looks like from the outside, but having lived through it, what does it
Yeah.
actually look like?
So you need an asset, an exchange company. So they actually hold the asset. So first of all, just like broad strokes, it defers your capital gains. So you don't have to pay capital gains on investment property when you sell. What it does is you take all the proceeds from the sale, you put it into an exchange company, they hold the money for you, and you need to buy a replacement asset within 6 months,
Yep.
or at least identify it, a replacement asset within 6 months. Um, so one, it was really simple. The asset preservation was the name of the company. They're out of Boston. They were very helpful. They walked me through it. I used Hull office down in Biddeford. So everything went really seamlessly, thankfully, because I already had the property identified. It was an off-market property before I sold the Sanford place. I think a lot of people get hung up because it's hard to find a property to buy.
Sure.
So that 6 months is kind of a ticking clock. One thing I did learn about it, which I didn't realize before I was in it, is it's not the gains you have to reinvest, it's the proceeds from the sale, which is a little different.
Okay.
So if like let's say you sell a property for 300 and you only owe $100,000 on it, you have to invest that whole 200 minus selling costs. So what I would do in the future is I would refi first.
Gotcha. So your initial equity still has to go in, where if you refied first, you could have taken that out.
Right, exactly. And then you have cash and you don't have to reinvest the whole chunk.
Got it.
It didn't really make that much of a difference for me, but that was something I was surprised by. And it was something I've never heard anybody talk.
That's an interesting little catch there because yeah, you think you buy the property, there is a down payment. You put money down when you bought it. When you sell it, you're obviously going to get that back, plus
Right.
whatever the gain was, but you've got to invest the whole chunk. So really, that initial equity is also in the 1031 exchange too. You don't get to take that back.
Plus the loan pay down. So
Yeah.
it's all in there. I mean, I don't mind having that money in a property, but it's just if you want to have more flexibility, that's one extra step. And I think it would give you a lot more liquidity.
Yeah. So good tip would be if you're going to do a 1031 exchange and you want to get your initial equity out, refi first, then do the exchange. Interesting.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the real estate business for a minute. So you've been in it for 3 years now. You joined us at our event in October on the Young Guns panel and had some great feedback for people. Let's talk a little bit about your business as a younger, newer agent. How did you get going?
Yeah. So I think a big thing that helped me was the self-education. Like I came into it reading a bunch of books, listening to the bigger podcasts.
Yep.
So that was super helpful because I could speak with a level of authority that inspired confidence in clients. But it's a whole different business when you're working with people. So the mentors are so important. And you get assigned a mentor. I was thankful to have a lot of experienced friends in the business that I've met over the years. So I had like a list of people. Every time I ran into something, I would call them and get good advice, varying opinions, and that really helped me out. So another thing that I would consider really kind of crucial to building that is going to the office. So going to the office, even when I had nothing to do, it helped me make those relationships with the mentors. And it also helped me listen to how they talked on the phone, what kind of habits they were doing, helped me get referrals when I was new. Like a lot of the busier agents don't want to deal with a $300,000 listing in Lewiston or a buyer that you got to drive, but some business is better than no business. You give them a generous referral fee and hopefully they give you another one down the road. So I think a lot, like 25% of my business was referrals from other agents my first year, which was really helpful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a big key. We had this mastermind event in October because we love to bring people together to
It
share
was
things
awesome.
and be able to
Yeah.
talk. But really, you can do that in the office every day. Like just if you come in and surround yourself with successful people that are doing what you want to do, whether they're a step ahead of you or 10 steps ahead of you, if you can be around those people, see what they do, hear what they say, learn how they act and conduct their business, there's huge value in that.
Yeah,
You know, and
absolutely.
and putting yourself on an island in this business is the worst thing you can do because that exposure is so big.
And you're doing your clients a disservice. It's I've done, I mean, at least a handful of deals where it was just you know, coffee or water cooler talk at the office, like, oh, you have that coming up. I have a buyer that would be perfect for that.
Yep.
And yeah. And you always notice the most successful agents are the ones that are always in the office.
Yep.
It's always the same cast of characters hanging out in the office. And they're always the ones doing most business.
Yep. Yeah. Success is boring. And I laugh about it all the time in our office, with Jeff. Jeff Matea may be the king of boring. He comes in there every day. He makes his happy birthday phone calls. He sends out his note cards. He does his lead gen. He makes all those follow-up calls. Like he literally just follows the playbook every day.
Yeah.
And that leads to massive success. And to your point, when you look at those successful agents, they're not doing anything that's crazy or flashy or new. They're just doing the things that lead to business, and they do them every day.
Yeah. And it's important to do the boring stuff consistently.
Yep.
One thing that I do, it's a little neurotic and embarrassing, but I track all my habits and have it in an Excel spreadsheet, or I use Google Sheets so I can do it on my phone.
Yep.
And I actually see a line graph on how I'm doing throughout the year. And it's so, if I compare that to the business that I've done, correlates so closely to the habits.
Mm.
Like if I'm doing them more consistently, I get more business. Like the correlation is uncanny. It's almost one for one.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to hear that because a lot of people I know feel like I do the same thing every day and I'm just not seeing it yet. I'm not seeing it. That it's that idea of being like, the one shovel away from hitting gold. If you continue to do the action, do them consistently as your business has proven, you'll get there. But you have to just stay the course. And that's what successful people do. They continue to do the boring stuff forever. And that leads to success.
Absolutely. It's just consistency.
Yeah.
And tracking. I think that's important because it's easy to get discouraged if you don't see the correlation.
That's true. And I remember one of my first meetings when I was back in corporate finance with the CFO of IDEX, and her comment was, what gets tracked gets managed. If you can't see it and measure it, then there's nothing you can do about it. And that's always stuck with me. And I hear that consistently. And you're a great example of that. I know the things I need to do. And because I know what I need to do, I'm going to make sure I track what I do so that when I fall off or I get lazy or I cheat a little bit, like I can course correct and bring myself back because I know if I do these things, it will lead to where I want to go.
And that's okay to fall off a little bit as long as you
Absolutely.
correct. Yeah. I mean, I wish my graph was like that, but it is not even close. So yeah, it's definitely gotta track it.
Yep, exactly. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent and being able to correct when you see that you've fallen too far off.
For sure.
Yeah. Perfection's an illusion. All right. So with all that being said, Nick, when you think about your business and your success, you mentioned a couple of things that are kind of important to your success, but what would you say has been the most important thing? Is it a particular habit, trait, mentor, mindset? Like what is the one thing you can point to as being critical to your success?
I think the number one thing would just be actually doing a good job for clients. I'm not good on self-promotion. That's not something I'm good at. So I rely on people talking about their experience with me.
Yep.
So I think just making sure that I'm on top of everything and I'm providing a good service. I'm being the resource that my clients need when they're making this huge purchase, and that the experience is a good one. So I think that's the most important thing.
So one thing I hear a lot of from new agents is they feel like this is a sales business. You're just selling. And I consistently hear from those of you that are doing big things as agents that really it's more of a service business. When somebody says you're in sales, and you're really in service. What is your response to that? How do you answer that question?
There's, I mean, I think people kind of conflate a couple things because we are selling houses.
Hmm.
If I mean, not so much me because I do mostly buyers, but if you're in the sales of selling houses, that's important.
Mhm.
That's providing a service to a client that needs to sell a home. Um, so I do think we're more in the service business, but every business has an aspect of sales.
Mhm.
We need to be able to sell our services. Um, and it's a lot easier to sell good services. So
Yes.
you provide a good service and then you don't really have to be that big of a salesman because your work talks for itself. So, I mean, I probably should be better at promoting myself and, getting on social media and, trying to get new business, but, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I want people to answer my phone, answer when I call because I don't want them to say, "Oh, what's next?" Like,
Yes.
is he calling before? Like, I want them to answer my call. I want them to know that, I'm there to provide a service and I'm not there to, try to get something out of them.
You're selling your abilities and you're servicing clients. You're not selling homes to people that don't want them. You're
Right.
not trying to convince people to buy something they don't need. You're
Right.
selling your ability to help them. They're saying they need help, and then you serve them to take care of them, which is really how this process is supposed to work. And that's oftentimes the links there are what gets missed.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So continuing down this path, what's been the most difficult lesson you've learned along the way?
I had to think about this one a lot. So I obviously, run into many challenges
Mm.
through transactions. I think the most difficult thing, it's more like a skill that I had to build, not really like a mistake I made, is delivering bad news because
Mm.
that's something that is inevitable. It happens all the time, especially in the market we just left where, you submit 10 offers and don't get a property.
Yep.
So, delivering bad news tactfully and having a plan of action to correct or persist, I think was a really important skill to develop. It wasn't, you always, those phone calls, you just don't want to make it. You don't want
Yep.
to like hit the call button. And I've delayed like making that call, which is the worst thing you can do. You need to
Yep.
just do it right away, make sure they're aware. And I think I was surprised about how little people shoot the messenger.
Mm.
I mean, it is what it is, but you're on a team with your client, which you need to remember and sometimes remind them of too.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point because I think we all feel like when we've got bad news to deliver, that phone gets heavy, the palms are sweaty, like
Yeah.
you get the pit in your stomach. You're trying to find a million reasons why you can't do it. Oh well, I've got to put this paper away first. I can't make this call. You're just trying to avoid it. Um, and especially for you as a younger, newer agent, and many times I'm sure you're working with clients that are much older than you, and you've got to be the bearer of bad news. How do you get over that fear of making the call? Like, what do you do to kind of psych yourself up to pick up the phone and just push the call button to deliver that news?
It's like jumping off, I'm going to say jumping off a cliff because I used to jump into the rivers and you just got to do it. You just got to like press the button and then do it. It's like you got to like, hit the button without thinking. You just have to like kind of take the plunge, just jump into it. It's not, you can't rationalize it because, or at least I can't. I just have to
Mhm.
dial the number. I look at it on my phone and I just hit the call button. And I mean, then there's no turning back. You just have to have that conversation.
Makes sense. It just rip the Band-Aid off. The more we think about it, the worse we make it. And like anything, it's always the lead up to it is the worst part. Then you make
Yeah.
the phone call and they're like, "Oh, okay, that's too bad, but we understand." And then you hang up. And you're like, "Wow, why was I so worried about that?" But just
Right.
it is going into it. You just don't want to do it, and then you realize that it's not going to kill you. Nothing we do in this business is fatal, but everything feels like it's going to be fatal before we do it.
It's a lot. Yeah. So, I mean, everything's a big deal, but nothing's fatal. One
Yeah.
thing I learned from, another more experienced agent is it's pretty silly, but it actually kind of works is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. method.
Yep.
And you literally just count down from 5 and then do it. And if you don't do it at 1, you count down from 5 again. It's- hopefully you do it on the first time, but you're committing at 5. And then when you get to 1, you press that button.
Yeah, that's a good one. It puts you on the clock, force you to take action at a certain point in time.
It sounds so silly, but of course,
It doesn't matter how silly it is, as long as it gets you to do it. That's really the end goal there. So last question for you. What is the one piece of advice you wish you had gotten before you got started?
the one piece of advice, I think would be to kind of roll with the punches. And I used to, when I was first starting, I would stress out so much about one thing, and it ended up, kind of what we were just talking about. This business is very emotional. It's a roller coaster of emotions a lot of the time, through even a single transaction. And I think, you need to be able to detach yourself from the emotion and think logically and, work through problems. So I wish someone would have said, hey, nothing is perfect. Everything, I'm a perfectionist. I want a transaction, and a lot of them do, but some transactions don't go perfectly, and you can't beat yourself up. You just have to do the best you can to make sure you get to your end goal of closing the property or renegotiating or whatever it may be. So didn't anticipate that level of emotion and kind of the roller coaster prior to getting into the business.
Yeah, that's great feedback, because it does get messy and it's not always pretty. But it's, whenever you're dealing with multiple people and multiple parties, it's always going to get a little messy. But so many of us come into this thinking it's going to just follow the path. It's going to be perfect every time. And it isn't. It just isn't. And you've got to be okay with that. All right, Nick. Well, before we let you go, if people want to know more about you and your story, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. So, you can look me up on social media, Instagram, Facebook. I'm there, just Nick Laverriere. And then I have a business Google page. And look at my website, or just reach out. So happy to have any conversation.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time today, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you, Harrison. I appreciate you having me. It was a good time.